I have something in common with Will Smith, Michael Phelps, and Walt Disney. While it truly isn't fame, it's actually a mental illness called ADHD. ADHD, or attention deficit disorder, is a behavioral condition caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain that makes focusing on everyday requests and routines very challenging. Unlike a neurotypical brain where these routines would occur naturally. While most diagnoses are made during early childhood, nearly 5% of U.S. adults are affected by it, while the largest unexpected surge of diagnosis is among mothers, believe it or not. Studies show ADHD tends to become more troubling as age progresses because more is expected of one to manage themselves. Take it from me, at the age of 24, my lifelong self-diagnosis of only child syndrome was formally diagnosed as ADHD. Despite the stigma that ADHD is not a real disorder and is highly influenced by willpower, it's actually completely non-voluntary control. I mean, all symptoms of ADHD are things everyone has trouble with sometimes. It's just ADHD people have a lot more trouble. So today I'm going to discuss how staying focused and organized tend to be nearly impossible for an ADHD brain without the proper assistance. Dr. Thomas Brown describes the ADHD's brain function to be like a cell phone with bad service. It just can't stay tuned. It's not that you want to drop the call, it's just you can't get good enough reception to take the call. People with ADHD find it incredibly difficult to pay attention, especially if it's something that we aren't excited about. It's not that we don't want to, it's just that we can't get our brain to stay quiet long enough to actually do it. The hyperactivity of ADHD isn't always displayed by external restlessness. In most cases, internal restlessness is occurring at all times. Hundreds of flying thoughts coming in at the minute, the last one forgotten with the next. For a person with ADHD, it's like our brain's a TV playing 4 different channels at once, and it gets kind of hard to separate the signal from the noise. I'll give you a perfect example of how our brain works. Say you're sitting in class reviewing for a big test, you're in tune with your professor, and all intentions on following instruction. And so one of your classmates drops a pen. The sound of that pen hitting the floor immediately grabs your attention, and with instinct, you look around for the pen. Within those couple seconds, you get completely sidetracked from the lesson. You may think about what you're having for dinner or some assignment you have coming up, get fixated on the squirrel taking laps around the tree, and then remember you left your keys in the car. And before you know it, your teacher's wrapping up the review, and even though you were there physically, you mentally tuned out what was being discussed during the lesson to tune into the noise that was going inside of your brain. All of this was caused by that pen hitting the floor. Sounds a bit chaotic, doesn't it? But that's actually what an untreated ADHD brain is. Constant internal chaos. As a fellow ADHDer, I can contest that our sense of time is either now or not now, and most of the time it's not now, which tends to be very overwhelming when attempting to organize time, thoughts, and things. The main reason ADHDers get so overwhelmed when it comes to these things is because we have trouble with executive functions, one of which is inhibition. We often try to tackle too much at once. For instance, we could be doing homework and realize the dryer stopped and the laundry needs to be folded and put away. But after taking the clothes out the dryer, we decide, oh, maybe we should pick up the dryer sheets that are on the floor. That leads to inspecting the floor and really convincing yourself that they need to be cleaned, which leads to cleaning the floors and realizing you didn't pull something out for dinner. You sit the vacuum down, go into the kitchen, pull out the chicken in the freezer, and get sidetracked by dishes. Next thing you know, dinner has been forgotten, and on top of that, that homework assignment you were working so hard on was marked as incomplete because you forgot about that too. And that amount of time, you managed to do a lot, but weren't able to get a lot done. Again, chaotic, I know. While these are just a few prime examples on the everyday struggles of living with untreated ADHD, so many people encounter similar scenarios in their everyday life and ignore the big red flags because they either believe the constant chaos is normal or they just don't want to become a part of the mental health stigma. With that being said, the purpose of this speech was not only to inform you of a mental illness that affects me and millions of others' everyday life, but also to relate with you on everyday occurrences that you or your loved ones may not recognize as symptoms. I can honestly say, being diagnosed with ADHD has changed my life. By utilizing proper plans and treatments that I was offered, as a full-time working mom, dental hygiene student, I have learned to use my ADHD quirks as superpowers. Remember, neurotypical doesn't necessarily mean smarter or better, because ADHD has nothing to do with how smart you are. People with ADHD tend to be more intelligent than average. They just can't fully apply themselves to produce the actions and ideas without proper assistance. So if you feel like this information to this speech spoke to you, or maybe your loved one, I highly recommend you contacting your doctor for further intake and information. In closing, the reason I opened my speech with relating myself to Will Smith, Michael Phelps, and Walt Disney is because I also plan on using my ADHD to help me flourish throughout my future. Dr. Edward Holloway said ADHD is like having a race car engine as a brain. It is very powerful and can help you win races. There's just one problem. You have bicycle brakes, and that often makes you spin out during races. But with a proper help from brake specialists, referring to proper treatment, you can actually strengthen those brakes and control that powerful engine and start winning the races. So take charge, take change, start winning races. Thank you for watching.